Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Inside Marine. This week, I'm joined by the CEO of award-winning British super yacht tender builder, Pascoe International. Richard Watson, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, James, and thank you very much for inviting me to take part in your show.
Great. Well, look, and thank you for your time. You don't have to look from very far to see there's an awful lot going on at Pascoe at the moment, and really excited to be kind of brought up to speed with that. But of course, this podcast is really, it's about you as much as the business, and we like to start off and go right back to the beginning. And you have had a career-long time within the marine industry. So I'm really interested to go back to find out how it started and why the marine industry.
Okay. Like you say, it's been a lifelong obsession, I think is the right word. I was into sort of building things and making things right from a young age. And I think I've got photos of me with cardboard boats I'd built at the age of 3 or 4. And I was fascinated by how things worked and taking things apart and putting things together and making my own things. And I got into sailing at about the age of 10 in dinghy sailing. And that was the real combination of that obsession with the making things and the marine industry really became paired. So right through certainly my secondary school age, I knew I wanted to go and study yacht design. And that's all it was for me. I worked for a while for a dinghy builder in my teens, and ended up going to Southampton Institute to do yacht and powercraft design after A-levels, and then failed. So I found that the math side of things, the design side of things wasn't really my passion. I was really all about the making things, and that was at the same time they'd developed the new degree, which was at the time yacht manufacturing and surveying. So I was actually the first year of graduation out of YMS, which is one of the courses we now hire a lot of our design team from. Okay. And that sort of got me started in the marine industry proper. And then that combination of having worked a bit on the shop floor, built and raced my own dinghies, and had the university education, allowed me to get my first job in the office managing Halmatic, who were at the time sort of at their largest, I think 400 odd staff during the period I worked for them. And I ultimately ended up running the small boat manufacturing arm of Halmatic, which included a couple of super yacht tender builds. Mm-hmm. And from then, I got involved with Ken Freevock, who offered me the opportunity to step in as general manager at Pascoe International when I was only in my late 20s and had no experience of running a company or the sort of commercial exposure you get as a general manager and later CEO. So it was a bit of a leap of faith for Ken and a bit of a steep learning curve for me. But really, I think it was that interest in building stuff, making stuff, the passion that I had to create and drive the team creating that allowed me to develop in that role and grow Pascoe into what it is now. I think we were building 3 or 4 boats a year and had 12 guys on the shop floor when I started 15 years ago today.
Yeah, today.
Yeah.
Happy work anniversary.
Thank you. Now, as you say, award-winning, one of the largest sort of luxury tender manufacturers in the business, over 100 staff. So a very different beast to what it was 15 years ago.
Yeah, well, look, it's a huge success, and it's fantastic to see somebody who really came to a business and has been with it for such a long time and been such an important part of the journey, which we get to. But right back at when you joined Pascoe and you were talking to Ken about coming into the business, was there the vision within the business that at that point maybe what there is now, and was it always the plan to kind of take it on this growth journey?
Definitely. I mean, it was very interesting one coming and working for Ken, because Ken, he's not motivated by the money or the size. He always had a passion for just building the best tenders that he could. And I really think for him, it was an immersion in the super yacht industry he could never again just as a designer, if you will. You're never going to be able to design as many yachts as we could build tenders for. So in the early days, I used to try and pin him down to how much do you want to grow it? How much money do you want to make? And his answer was always the same. His answer was always, no, I just want to make great tenders. And yeah, that's what sort of motivated the business. Is we've always wanted to develop the range to have any model that you could imagine on a 100-meter yacht, or from all sorts of different shapes and sizes and uses. And it was Ken's drive always to create rather than to make money or drive turnover, which actually then ultimately led to a growth, because we were product driven rather than business driven. So when we're taking decisions on the risk of developing a new model, or should we spend the money redeveloping that to be slightly better, the answer was always yes, rather than, oh no, it will be expensive, or will it cost too much? Yeah. And right back to our sort of first hard-sided boats in 2011.
Yeah.
The first one we contracted, we spoke to the client and said, can we exhibit it at Monaco Yacht Show? And they said, no, we'd rather not. So as a business, in the split second in an afternoon, we made the decision to make a stock £600,000 boat so we could exhibit it and promote it. And that's what I've always loved about this business, is that sort of fluidity, that ability to have an hour-long conversation and make a wild decision and then just make it stick and get on with it.
Yeah. I mean, we talk a lot about this industry about, it is quite a passion-fueled industry, and a lot of people, at all levels within the industry tend to kind of have that interest, in boating, or that passion. You've talked about how passionate you were about the boats in the industry, and it sounds like Ken shared that. I mean, in general, how important do you think that is? To have a successful business, to really drive a successful business over the top of just very, very good business practice? Does absolute sort of passion sort of win through, I suppose, with that?
Well, that's the magic question, because I think really you need both. And I think that's why Pascoe has succeeded so much over the years, because we're not just about the love of the product over the sense. We've all, I've always tried to bring into it the maths, the analytics, can we afford it? How do we fund it? All those sorts of things. You've got to have both. And I think where we've seen quite a few sort of owner-manager businesses flounder over the years is that they'll have one or the other. They'll be a great businessman, but maybe they'll lack the flair of design, or they'll be an incredible designer, but maybe not always be able to fund their projects. And ever since sort of Ken's involvement in Pascoe, we've had a combination of business sense, client-facing sales flair, engineering and design. And I think that's where, a really successful business excels, because you've got to have the passion and the flair to create the desirable product. You've got to be able to engage with your clients, but you've also got to keep the business on a stable footing and not necessarily the growth that we've seen in Pascoe over the years, just to be able to sustain yourselves. And I think that's the key to success, is to be able to combine those aspects in a balanced way, to have something that you're generating desire for in the industry, both in terms of what it is and how you engage in the industry, and the ability to produce it economically, to keep it accessible, to keep the business stable, to keep the customer happy. And that's what it boils down to, keeping the customer happy.
Yeah, quite. Yeah. And obviously being in the business for so long, you've been in the business 15 years. I think the business has been going for 17 years in total, maybe a little bit longer.
Since 2004 as Pascoe International, yeah.
Right. So, what's the kind of the big lessons that you've learned along the way as a business leader?
Well, I think that the biggest step change as we've grown, the biggest lesson is about empowerment and enabling the team to do what they can do to the best of their ability. Particularly as you grow a business, many of the people in the business have grown with us as we've grown. Some of the people, our production manager has been with us 15 years and has grown with the business as a perfect example. And as the business grows, is empowering other people within the business to take decisions, to run areas, to have autonomy within their area of the business is a huge leadership tool, because I don't think you can class yourself truly as a leader if you're micromanaging every area of the business or trying to be involved in every decision. You've got to enable the people around you to grow, to develop, to take control, to wear the weight of their decisions on their shoulders, good or bad. And in some cases, they can't learn unless you give them the ability to potentially fail, but then not, batter them for that afterwards, but support them through that process. No, that's really, really, really interesting. And one of the things that I always note with Pascoe is that, you have a really, really great retention rate. A lot of the people who are in Pascoe have been there for a long time. You just gave a great example of the production manager just then, but I know that there's also a lot of, yourself and other senior members of the team and even a lot of the guys on your shop floor there. So you are clearly, focused on the people. How much would you put down this sort of retention and being a really, really great place to work where people want to stay down to this empowerment approach, non-micromanaged, and what else are you guys doing to keep people there? But I mean, definitely the sort of non-micromanagement empowerment side gives people a value in their work. I think also, the nature of the industry and the products we make is something that you can really really enjoy being involved with. We see when we launch a new model, how much of the team want to come out of the factory and watch it go in the water, and how many of the team share our social media posts on their own personal social medias and things. It's something they can really enjoy being part of and being proud to create the product. And one of the examples of that I love so much in industry is when NASA were working really hard to put a man on the moon in the late 60s, the sort of urban legend goes, you could go up to the guy who swept the floor and say, "What's your job?" And he would reply, "We're working to put a man on the moon." And it's the same philosophy that I like to work for in Pascoe. What's your job in cleaning the workshop? Well, we're making great super yacht tenders. And from the guy who's cleaning up to the guy who's handing over to the client, that's got to be the drive. It's got to be the interest. But they have a buy-in and they have an enjoyment and they have something to shout about in that from top to bottom in the business. That said, it's there's a lot of competition locally. We've got lots of other super yacht tender builders locally. Some of the best, most renowned builders in the world are very close to us. So keeping staff and, making yourself a place to want to work is very important. So, we've moved to hybrid models of working. We've increased our staff benefits, improved our HR side in terms of, regular reviews and development plans. And I think that all packages into making it somewhere which people enjoy working. They enjoy coming to work. And that then is borne out in the products that we build. And actually, before this interview started, you mentioned our work to move to our new site that we've been developing over the last couple of years. And that's a huge part of it in terms of creating a work environment that's surrounded by trees and grassy areas with picnic tables, and just really making it a nice place to come and work and enjoy coming to work.
Yeah. That really brings us really nicely into the kind of the present, if you like. But one more question I want to ask before we just get into that is, you just talked about making a place where people are proud to go to work, and I think that is absolutely paramount to have that culture, and it's very, very hard to get, I think, but along the journey so far, what with all the achievements, what are you most proud of to date?
I have to say, the thing that drives me and has made me proud is the development of the business. You can't escape the fact that we've made some beautiful products and some boats, which I absolutely adore and love to get the opportunity to be on. Not taking away from that, that's what brought me into the industry. But actually, the building the brand and building the business has been a huge achievement. I mean, when you start to talk about some of the numbers involved, it's the kind of thing that many companies dream of and struggle to achieve. And we've weathered, this is potentially the second recession we're weathering under my command. And, you've got to have strength and vision to go through those harder times and benefit in the good times. And the sort of pride and success of keeping those jobs and keeping the business running and feeding those mouths is immeasurable, really.
Yeah. Brilliant. And very people focused again, which I think is really nice to see. So bringing it back now to sort of the current time, it is a funny market at the moment, whether, in lots of different ways, whether you're looking at it from a financial point of view or a people point of view, it's crazy times. I mean, can you just give a summary on your take on the market at the moment that you're in?
Well, it's a very interesting thing, because we've spent the last 2 years feeling like we're fighting. When you're talking about running a manufacturing company in the UK, the Brexit process started, then we had a global pandemic and lockdowns. Then we go into the full sort of separation from the EU, and just as you start to get your head around each of these setbacks, the next thing happens, and then of course, the Ukraine conflict is the next thing that trips you up. And we sort of talk about, wouldn't it be nice to just get back to building boats and not worrying about all these global pressures? But of course you can't. You've got to try and manage these pressures. So on one hand, we're having, horrendous issues with our supply chain management, just getting parts and materials to build boats. Simple things like we just can't get the plywood to build transoms with, because our particular high density birch plywood comes from Estonia and includes Russian birch, so it's investigating alternative supply chains for all these things. On the flip side of that, we're seeing a drive in demand for the product like we've never seen before. So many people have realized through the COVID pandemic that the idea of investing in a super yacht is a great idea, and order books in yards are fuller than they've ever been. Our order book is larger than it's ever been. There's a real sort of desire to go super yachting, which is great for the industry, great for the UK's place in that market, great for us as a manufacturer of product for that market. So you're trying to weigh up constantly the global pressures that affect the supply chain and the customer chain with the sort of demand for the product, and it's constant challenge.
Yeah. And have you got a prediction, I suppose, on how long this kind of wave will last? Yes, of course, there's this newfound kind of either interest in super yachting or just in marine and leisure in general.
It is.
Do you get it? Sorry?
It's, certainly through 2020, we saw everything from a second-hand £20 canoe to a 600 million euro yacht was desperate demand for it, wasn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. And that does seem to be continuing. And the interesting thing that I talk about on the podcast quite a lot is, who is the customer? It feels like there's a new wave of customers along with this new wave of interest. And we've spoken to some of the big super yacht builders themselves and the designers, but I'd be really interested to get your take on, are you seeing ultimately a new type of customer and then actually then asking or wanting a new type of product or requirement from you in their tenders, for example?
I wouldn't say there's a step change. No. Okay. Over the last sort of say 5 years, we've obviously seen 8 years. We've seen more emerging markets come into the super yacht sort of sector. The Far East, South America are particular growing markets. I think the COVID situation has brought people off the fence. People who were thinking about going yachting and didn't because it was too much money or they didn't have enough time to make it viable, are now investing in yachts. So we're seeing new people come into the market, but I wouldn't say there's a sort of step change in that being different people or, be that race, age, wealth. Mm-hmm. We're still getting a good mix of people. We get people from complete opposite ends of the scale, from people who, buying a 70-meter yacht as their first boat, through to people who've always been into boats and are just getting larger and larger. And of course, particularly when you look at tenders, that brings very, very different expectations from somebody who doesn't want to be rocked around and get wet and things like that, to somebody who just wants to be out on a boat all day going swimming or other water sports. Yeah. But no, I wouldn't say from our side we're seeing a step change in the type of buyer.
Okay, that's interesting. So look, I'm really interested to find out a bit more about what's happening in the business right now. And of course, you've already mentioned the location change. How's that going? You're sort of mid-move, aren't you, at the moment? And, you talked about the importance of the location being a nice place for all the guys who work with you, which is great. But that site in particular and the size of the site and, how important has all that been? Is that in response to demand, or is that we'll build it and they will come approach?
A bit of both, actually. I mean, we've been talking about buying a site for the business for about 5 or 6 years, but a lot of the staff live very close to where we're based. A lot of them have moved closer during the time that we've worked on the previous site further down the Hamble. So when we were looking at sort of various developments around the Solent region, we looked at places from Hythe and Fawley and Daedalus and Fortester, and they were getting too far away from the staff. And we risked losing a lot of long-term standing staff, which we didn't want to do. So then when we looked closer, trying to tie together something that was geographically close and something that fit our business model in terms of the products we make and what we want to present to clients was very difficult. So when we first stumbled across Eastlands in 2020 for sale, it seemed like a golden opportunity, and we pretty much jumped at the opportunity and purchased it as soon as practical. It's then taken a long time to vacate the original tenants from the site and redevelop the site for our use. So the current status is all fit out is over at Eastlands, from sort of bare mouldings onwards. And we're just finishing the main office build over there. And then we've got 2 further phases of new build to build a new composite centre and a new sort of sales HQ. And that will give us about 50% increase in floor space. But it was lots more about the environment and the efficiency than it was growth, really. Yeah, we will be able to grow, and that will help us manage our lead times and our supply and demand issues. But it was much more about the environment. When you bring an owner to visit a couple of different tender builders and you come into our sort of leafy green 12-acre site of the last development on the Hamble, it's a very different image to something on an industrial estate inland or a more sort of normal, shall we say, manufacturing facility. But the extra space allows us to do things a little bit differently and improve the working environment, improve the efficiency of the builds. We're putting a lot of technology in the project in terms of sustainable technologies, in terms of power generation, heating systems, staff welfare. So it's been a very interesting project in terms of building a manufacturing facility for the next 30, 40 years, 50 years.
Brilliant. And what is the sort of timeframes for to you to be sort of fully in there and transitioned and up and running from here on in?
Well, from next month we plan that the office staff will move over, and that will make things a lot easier. But we've got a couple of years of work still to do on the new build developments before we're totally finished. About 18 months before we're all on one site. Yeah, it's much more about doing it in a steady fashion and not overstretching ourselves, and managing managing the builds alongside the development.
Yeah, I guess a project like that can become a bit all encompassing, and you don't want to be distracted from the business itself too much.
Yeah, exactly. So, we're looking a long time in advance in terms of our production schedule of which boats start to come in where and what gets done where. And it's a really enjoyable process. And we're really excited about the future that site holds and what we'll be able to, show to our clients and what we'll be able to do in terms of on-site events and similar.
You talked just then about, the work that you've done to get up the build sheds, and actually, but you've put a bit of focus in things like sustainability and that sort of stuff. What have you used this opportunity to do anything kind of a bit different with your manufacturing facility that is going to really set you up for the next kind of 30, 40 years, like you said, where you can almost start with a blank canvas, which maybe you didn't have from the previous site. You do, what's going to be the wow factor on the site, whether someone's in the build sheds or in the sales office?
I mean, the biggest things we've done are all around environmental control. So before we started this move process, we started to transition to a closed infusion process for molding all our boats. It gives better structural weight characteristics for the boat. It's better working environment for the guys. And so the whole place has been set up for a closed mold infusion process rather than traditional hand lay composites. And we've taken that on in the build of the units all around. A lot of the work we've done is about environmental control in terms of the working environment. So it's about temperature control, humidity control, air quality control, ventilation, extraction, and just really making sure that we get away from these traditional aspects of boat building being somewhere that's dirty, dusty, smelly. Yeah, and ultimately bad for you. We all know people who've worked in the industry for a long time who have health problems in not even older age, in middle age. And we want to make sure that the facility is just stopping any of those things going forward. So, we've spent a huge amount of money on air quality control, be that temperature and humidity or dust mitigation and just stopping things like the dust getting into the environment, having closed grinding areas, closed cutting areas, downdraft tables for mixing, all those things that you see some of in boat manufacturing facilities, but often there's just not enough of, and the dust is still everywhere. And you can see the atmosphere sparkling in the sunlight coming through the doors and all those horrible things we associate with boat building. Making sure we don't have any of that. Yeah, no, good. And of course, then making that a really attractive place to come and work, because it feels like that
people are really tuning into that side of a working environment, as well as the more traditional things that you look at when you're choosing your next employer.
Definitely. And I really think that sort of the health and safety and environmental control side is something that shop floor staff particularly are now looking at when they come around to look at a potential sort of move to a new employer. And again, on the sales side, you bring a client who's not used to the boat building environment into a manufacturing shed that smells bad and is dirty, and they don't want to be there. Whereas you're bringing them into somewhere that's more akin to a Formula One workshop, and they're fascinated by the process, and they start to engage and they start to talk to the team, who are then happy to be there because they're enjoying working in that environment. And it all becomes a sort of circular process.
Yeah, no, it sounds absolutely brilliant. And of course, the new site is just up the river from us. So I'm going to be looking forward to seeing many brand new Pascoes floating past the office window in the near future.
Well, look out the window this afternoon, because I think we've got one coming out.
Okay, right. So, I mean, again, this leads us really nicely into the future, and obviously the site is very much happening right now, and busier than ever, growth plans for sure. But what does the future look like for you and Pascoe?
Well, the sustainability move is a big one for us. And when we identified where we wanted to go, our sort of vision for the future of Pascoe a few years ago, sustainability was a big word that came up. And we've touched on the sustainability of the workforce, the work environment, the facility. That was a huge aspect of it. But also the sustainability of the product. I think a lot of people can criticize the super yacht market because of the extravagance, the excess, the ultimately unnecessary nature. And when we look at environmental sustainability, I think that the yacht market can get a bit of a bad press. But I really see it as a vehicle that allows us to develop and production engineer technologies that you couldn't in a normal commercial environment. We're seeing clients come forward now with a real desire to do something really technologically advanced from a sustainability point of view, and willing to fund the development of that in a way that you couldn't in a normal commercial environment. And that, of course, then brings the technology development forward and brings it to the wider market. So we're working very hard at the moment on two big strains of attack. First is our electric boat project. So we will be hitting the water next year with our first fully electric limousine tender, and testing on the propulsion package is already underway. And that's a big leap forward. I think we're doing it very differently to the rest of the industry, and we'll be making a bit of a step change with the technology. Mm-hmm. So that's a super exciting time for the industry, for us as a builder. We're also doing a lot of development on bioresins and bioresin content, which again starts to look at the sort of lack of dependence on natural, sort of plastic-based systems, and more looking at natural, sustainable-based manufacturing products. So those two things combined will really, hopefully, launch us into the next century of yacht building. And what I'd like to see is the super yacht industry being a vehicle for that kind of sustainable development. And I've seen some of your previous sort of interviewees on this program have touched on that in terms of efficiency of design and efficiency of the final yachts. And I really, I think that's a huge area that we as an industry should be investing in and should be encouraging our client base to invest in.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And obviously great to hear that you guys have a focus on that, not just on the electric side, which obviously is very much on people's radars, but also the bioresins and that side of it as well, which feels like it's not quite as much of a focus, but definitely catching up, and I know that there's some really interesting technologies out there now coming out. So yes, great. And you're right. I think the super yacht industry has a brilliant platform to really kind of drive that over the next centuries.
Yeah, and particularly, at the moment, the super yacht industry isn't getting the best press, shall we say? So to drive that sort of look at our latest developments and look how we're changing the world for the better is, I think a huge sale that the industry as a whole can make to the general population.
I mean, just staying on that for a minute, there's clearly individual projects within companies and individual focuses on this, and quite rightly so. Is the industry, though, doing enough to come together and really kind of, I suppose, share ideas, share, collaborative working around that? When we say the super yacht industry, are you seeing enough of that at the moment?
I think obviously we're at a formative time in some technologies. Our electric boat, as a perfect case in point, we're being quite protective of the technology we're developing because it is new and unique to us. So for us to have a market advantage, we've got to keep the details close to our chest. So no, that's not a very collaborative outlook. But the flip side of that is we're working very closely with the shipyard involved in that project, and we're sharing a lot of ideas about classification and fire protection and performance and integration between yacht and tender. And that's a very collaborative relationship. And I think it's almost sort of swings and roundabouts that yes, across the wider yacht project, if you look at a particular project, yes, there's a lot of collaboration between technology partners and companies to develop that technology. But if we were looking at that more in terms of the tender market, no, I think each of us in the industry are being quite tight-lipped about what we're doing and keeping things to ourselves for obvious commercial reasons. And in a way, that's positive because we're driving the development individually, but I suppose that could be a detrimental effect. But we've seen the same in the automotive industry over the last sort of 20 years of electric cars. There's been quite isolated development in the early days, and now we're seeing a much more sort of standardized approach in terms of charging tech, battery tech, integration of similar batteries and motors across multiple brands, and I think that's where we'll be heading in the marine industry as a wider whole. We see companies like Vita trying to sort of launch a charging system, and obviously we're taking a lot of notice of that and making sure that our technology is compatible with some of those other businesses.
Yeah, good. And I think I was having a conversation with somebody the other day, and for me personally, the amount of technology development in whether it's in the leisure marine or the super yacht side at the moment, I don't think there's been a time where there's more investment and focus on technology development, whether that's sustainability technology or actually other technology like electronic technology. We see now augmented reality navigation goggles, and what a time to sort of come and work in the industry from being almost a pioneer of some of this technology at this really exciting time. Are we as an industry doing enough to promote a lot of this exciting kind of technology to help more people into the industry and attract more people?
Well, I think you've hit my magic subject there. No, I mean, one of the things that motivates me and I absolutely love is that, particularly when you look at the UK market, we do drive a lot of that intelligence and technology and new development. And I think it's one of the areas where we can keep a sustainable business model in a challenging global market is being global technology leaders. Because if we're developing new and we're launching new, it always gives us a favorable market position. When we talk about promoting that to potential workers in the market. No, we're just not doing enough. We're just not doing enough, and that needs to be done right from sort of key stage 2 in schools. We've got a great technology market, be it manufacturing through to, you mentioned some sort of the electronics and sort of computer technology side in this country and in Europe. And, there doesn't seem to be enough people being aware enough of the potential employment opportunities in that marketplace from a young enough age to focus on it. We spoke about my background earlier in the interview, and I was very focused from a very young age, and we're speaking to kids at sort of GCSE and A-level age who've got no idea of the opportunities that they could be getting involved in the marine market. We're just not promoting ourselves as an industry in a sort of sustained and collaborative way across the industry. There's not a body that I see that promote the breadth of the industry to younger people of something that they may want to get involved in from an employment point of view. Yeah.
No, I think we have a lot of work to do on that, but I think right now, we both agree by the sounds of it, there's a huge opportunities to attract more people. There's a lot going on. Has there been a more interesting, exciting time in our industry?
That's it. Yeah, the opportunities.
Not that I've seen, but
people to get. And we all talk about it. I mean, obviously, your industry is the recruitment side. Us, always looking for staff. It seems. There's a real shortage of skills out there, and dealing with that earlier in the sort of development process is key to that. I think getting people keen and interested in technology and manufacturing roles, and be that vocational qualification routes or higher education routes. Both are showing skill shortages at the moment. So it's suitable for all people to consider from a young age. They just need to be more aware of it.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. So look, I could talk for hours on that particular subject, but we are coming to the end, but we always ask one last question to our guests. And actually it's relevant to what we just talked about. If you were to give one piece of advice to somebody thinking about coming into our industry, or somebody who had just joined the industry,
I would say that the key advice, I think, is to take advantage of the opportunities that are presented to you. Really don't try and pigeonhole yourself. I see too many people, particularly in the sort of naval architecture degrees and things like that, want to come out and become a yacht designer, a sailing yacht designer. And of course, there's only a finite number of yacht designers, and yet there's so many, interesting and exciting careers that you could do with that sort of education background and skills. So, I ended up where I am today because I took advantage of the opportunities that I was given. I took the leap from a seemingly big, stable employer to come and work with Ken 15 years ago, when it probably wasn't the right idea, but it definitely panned out over time. And that's the advice I'd give to people is to be open-minded about where their careers may lead them, to be open-minded about the opportunities that are presented to them, to grasp those opportunities with both hands, and not necessarily get blinkered about where you may end up, or what kind of product you may be involved in, what kind of business you may be involved in, and just think outside the box in terms of your career development and what your next role may be. And I think if people have that mindset, we'll end up with the right skills and the right people in the right places in the business, or in the industry, because the best people will end up in the right jobs for them.
Great. No, absolutely fantastic advice there. And look, Richard, it's been brilliant talking to you today and catching up, and it's certainly been fantastic to watch Pascoe's journey over the years, and it sounds like it's only just getting started. So we'll continue to watch with interest, and congratulations with everything, and good luck with the rest of the move. And please come back on again and update us with how everything's going.
Well, thank you very much, James. And yeah, look forward to talking soon.
Yeah. Thanks, Richard. Bye-bye.
Bye.